You ever hear about the dog who refused to give up, even when the world around him was falling apart? His name was Thor, a German shepherd who crawled through a mountain of rubble after an earthquake, and somehow found a heartbeat buried beneath the dust. Now, here's the part that gets me every time. The rescuers had already given up. The scanners showed nothing. But Thor didn't care about logic or machines. He just knew. And that instinct saved a little girl's life. Maybe that's why we love dogs so much. They remind us of something pure that we've forgotten. Loyalty. Courage. Love that never asks why. I've spent years telling stories about German shepherd heroes, police dogs, rescue dogs, companions who show us what real devotion looks like. And this one, it changed me. Because this isn't just a rescue story. It's about what happens when love refuses to quit. Stay with me for a few minutes. And by the end, you won't just hear a story about a dog. You'll feel what it means to be truly loyal, and why the bond between humans and animals might just be the most powerful thing we have left. The morning sun stretched over the training grounds, touching the cracked walls of an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. The air carried a faint chill, the kind that always lingered after dawn, a quiet moment before the day's noise began. Dust motes drifted through slanted beams of light, settling on shattered glass and old steel beams. Somewhere beyond the fences, sirens wailed faintly, not in alarm, but as part of the city's heartbeat. Through the misted air, a figure moved with the steady precision of a soldier. His name was Officer Ryan Hale, early 40s, calm-eyed, every motion deliberate. Beside him padded a German shepherd, with a coat the color of dark honey and coal, muscles shifting smoothly under taut fur. His name was Thor. Even among K-9 units, Thor stood out. He was young, only 5, but carried the composure of a veteran. Every breath, every glance spoke of focus. When he looked at you, it wasn't the gaze of an animal. It was the gaze of something that understood. Those eyes, steel gray under the morning light, seemed to see through more than walls. They seemed to see into people. Ryan crouched beside him near a crumbling doorway. "You ready, partner?" His voice was low, affectionate. Thor's tail flicked once, a silent yes. A faint whistle cut through the air, the signal to begin. Instantly, Thor surged forward, paws kicking up fine dust as he disappeared into the shadows of the derelict building. Ryan followed, steps measured, his hand resting lightly on the leash, though he barely needed it. They had done this hundreds of times, enough that words weren't necessary. Inside, the air was thick and cold. Concrete slabs leaned precariously. Broken glass crunched beneath Ryan's boots. Somewhere above, pigeons scattered with startled wings. Thor paused, nose to the ground, sniffing with quick, focused breaths. Then he darted toward a pile of twisted metal, barking once, sharp and decisive. Ryan smiled. "Good boy. That's it." He dropped a marker beside the spot, jotting notes on his clipboard. Another successful detection. Their training routine unfolded like choreography, fluid, seamless. Thor moved ahead, sniffing, stopping, signaling. Ryan followed with quiet trust, responding to every bark, every shift of the dog's stance. The two of them were bound not by command, but by instinct, the kind that forms only when two lives depend on each other. When they paused for water, Thor sat obediently, but his eyes never left Ryan. That silent gaze again, intense, loyal, questioning. "You know, buddy," Ryan said, unscrewing a bottle, "you and we've seen some things most people never could stomach." He chuckled softly, rubbing Thor's head. You don't just find the living, you find the ones we can't bring back. Thor tilted his head slightly, as if he understood. Maybe he did. Ryan had learned long ago that dogs like Thor didn't just follow scent. They followed emotion. Grief, fear, hope. They could read them like open books. Outside, the city was waking. Horns blared faintly in the distance, and a subway rumble echoed beneath the ground. Somewhere far below their feet lay a deep fault line, invisible, sleeping. The earth had been trembling faintly in recent weeks. Nothing serious, but enough for Ryan to notice the hair on Thor's neck rise every time the ground gave its subtle shiver. Ryan glanced toward the skyline, tall, fragile towers glowing in morning gold. One day, he murmured, this whole place will shake again. He didn't mean to say it aloud. It came out like a thought escaping. Thor blinked, ears twitching, and let out a low whine. Ryan smiled at the sound, kneeling beside him. Don't worry. No matter what happens, we always go in together. That's the deal. He extended a hand, and Thor pressed his paw into it. A pact sealed in silence. Later, in the simulation zone, a collapsed section designed to mimic earthquake debris, Ryan scattered debris markers and hid scent pads beneath broken furniture. Find it, he commanded softly. Thor moved like a shadow through chaos, agile, deliberate, nose sweeping through dust. Every bark echoed off the hollow walls like thunder. When he located the scent, he froze, then began pawing urgently. Ryan watched, admiration mixing with awe. There was something sacred about the sight. This creature, bred for loyalty, risking everything for lives he didn't even know. When the exercise ended, Ryan tossed Thor his favorite toy, a worn-out rope ball. You earned it. Thor caught it mid-air, tail wagging for the first time all morning. That small burst of joy, pure, unguarded, was what Ryan lived for. Behind the discipline, behind the uniform, this was what it was really about. A bond built on trust, on silent promises. They walked out into the open field. The sun had risen fully now, turning the sky a pale gold. Wind whispered through dry grass. Ryan unclipped the leash, letting Thor run free. The dog sprinted toward the edge of the training grounds, looping back with energy that defied exhaustion. Ryan leaned against a post, watching. A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. Steel eyes and a golden heart, he said under his breath. A siren wailed distantly again, this time sharper. It wasn't part of the city's morning noise. Somewhere downtown, a tremor had been reported. Mild, harmless, the kind that made people glance up for a second before returning to their coffee. Ryan didn't notice. Thor stopped mid-run, nose lifted toward the horizon, ears rigid. He stood still, staring at something far beyond human sight. What is it, boy? Thor's gaze stayed fixed, his steel eyes narrowing slightly. Time before 100 pounds. Then, after a pause, he turned and trotted back to Ryan, pressing against his leg. A silent reassurance. Ryan laughed softly, patting his neck. Yeah, all right. False alarm. But as they packed up the gear and headed toward the truck, a faint rumble trembled beneath the asphalt, so subtle it could have been a passing train. Thor stopped once more, staring at the ground, tail low, a quiet whimper escaping his throat. Ryan knelt beside him. Hey, you're fine. We're fine. The tremor passed. The air grew still again. From a distance, the skyline shimmered peacefully, unaware of what slept beneath. And as Thor climbed into the truck, resting his head on Ryan's lap, the sun broke through the haze, bathing them both in a soft golden light. Two partners, bound by trust, driving toward another day that felt just like any other. Neither of them knew. It would be the last peaceful morning for a long time. The sun rose soft and slow over the neighborhood, its light spilling like honey across cracked sidewalks and blooming jacaranda trees. Morning birds perched on telephone wires, chirping against the hum of the waking city. In a small apartment near the edge of the training grounds, Lily pressed her face against the window pane, fogging the glass with her breath. She was 6, all curls, freckles, and unfiltered wonder, the kind of child who believed every sunrise meant something magical was about to happen. Behind her, Maria, her mother, moved through the kitchen with quiet precision, humming an old tune as she packed lunch. Her hands worked from habit, bread, cheese, fruit, but her eyes carried the fatigue of someone who'd been both mother and father for too long. Money was always tight. The word luxury didn't exist in their world, except maybe when she let Lily get an extra scoop of ice cream on weekends. "Mommy," Lily said, still at the window, "they're out there again." Maria turned, smiling. "Who, sweetheart?" "The dog and the man. The one from the police, look!" Across the field, through the chain-link fence, Thor and Officer Ryan were beginning their morning drills. Lily's small fingers gripped the windowsill, eyes wide as the German shepherd leapt over a wall of concrete blocks with effortless grace. "That's Thor," she whispered, as if naming a superhero. "He's so brave." Maria came over, resting a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "He's a working dog, baby. That means he's got an important job. You can't just go pet him like other dogs." Lily nodded, though her gaze didn't waver. "I don't want to pet him. I just want to tell him he's good." Maria chuckled softly, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You can tell him from here." It was Lily's birthday, though the apartment didn't look it. The only decoration was a single balloon tied to a chair, bright yellow, floating lazily near the ceiling. They couldn't afford a party this year, but Maria had woken early, baked a small vanilla cake, and placed 6 tiny candles on top. It wasn't much, but to Lily, it was everything. "Can we go to the park after breakfast?" Lily asked. Maria hesitated, checking the clock. Her shift started in an hour, but she saw the light in her daughter's eyes, the kind she didn't see often enough. "For a little while," she said finally. "We'll stop by the park." Lily's grin lit up the room brighter than any candle ever could. Across the street, the park stretched out beside the training zone, divided only by an old chain-link fence. Ryan and Thor were mid-session, scent drills, obstacle climbs, search cues. Ryan's commands were sharp but calm. Thor responded instantly, every movement precise. That's when he noticed them. A young woman in a faded coat and a little girl clutching a yellow balloon, watching quietly from the far end of the fence. Ryan smiled. He saw curiosity like that all the time. Kids loved police dogs. But there was something different about this one. The way she watched Thor, not with excitement, but with respect. Almost reverence. Thor must have felt it too. Between drills, his gaze kept flicking toward her. "Focus, buddy," Ryan murmured, snapping his fingers. Thor turned back obediently, for a few seconds. Then, the balloon caught a gust of wind. It slipped from Lily's fingers, rising up with sudden grace, a flash of yellow against the blue sky. "Oh no," she gasped, running a few steps along the fence. The balloon drifted higher, then downward again, straight toward the training field. Thor saw it first. Without waiting for a command, he bolted across the ground, muscles coiled and sure. The balloon, snagged briefly on a broken branch, bounced once before rolling across the dust. Thor slowed, approached it carefully, and with a gentle movement uncharacteristic of his strength, caught the string between his teeth. Ryan froze. Thor, the team watching nearby, chuckled, but Ryan couldn't help smiling. This was a breach of protocol, technically a fail in obedience, but the sight was disarming. The powerful K9, trained to face disaster zones, trotting proudly toward the fence carrying a child's runaway balloon like it was treasure. On the other side, Lily stood speechless, her hands clasped over her mouth. Thor stopped right in front of her, pressing the balloon gently against the wire. His tail wagged once, slow and deliberate. Lily bent down, her face inches from his. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice trembled, small, sincere. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. A girl and a dog, separated by metal, united by something wordless. Thor's steel-gray eyes softened, reflecting the golden hue of the balloon between them. Ryan walked up, pretending to scold but unable to hide his grin. "You just broke every rule in the book, partner." He looked at Lily. "Looks like he's picked his favorite human already." Lily giggled. "He's my hero now." Maria, standing behind her, wiped at her eyes quickly, hiding the emotion that surprised her. Something about that moment, the kindness, the connection, touched a place she hadn't felt in years. Ryan offered a friendly wave. "You can come by any time. He seems to like you." Maria smiled back. "We might just take you up on that." Thor dropped to a sit, still watching Lily as the balloon floated gently in her hands again. Ryan gave the signal to move on, but Thor didn't budge. He just kept staring at the little girl, as if memorizing her face. Finally, Ryan gave in with a soft laugh. "All right, 5 more seconds." 5 seconds that would etch themselves into fate. That night, as Maria tucked Lily into bed, the balloon hovered near the ceiling, its reflection dancing faintly in the window. "Mommy," Lily murmured, half asleep, "do you think Thor dreams?" Maria smiled, brushing her hair aside. "Maybe he dreams about being brave." "I think he dreams about helping people," Lily said softly, "like superheroes do." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly somewhere deep beneath the earth, so distant it might have been imagined. In another part of the city, Ryan lay on his couch, reading reports. Thor dozed nearby, twitching in his sleep, paws moving as if running through unseen fields. Ryan glanced at him, then at the faint tremor of a cup on the table. He frowned. A vibration, gone in a second. He reached down, resting a hand on Thor's head. "We'll get some rest, partner," he whispered. "Big day tomorrow." Thor shifted, sighing, tail thumping once before stilling again. In her room, Lily's balloon swayed against the ceiling, bumping softly with every tiny tremor. It was the calm before the storm, a fragile piece tied by a thin yellow string. And outside, beneath the sleeping city, the fault line stirred. The morning began like any other, bright, golden, and deceptively calm. The city hummed with life. Vendors lined the sidewalks, calling out prices for steaming dumplings and roasted corn. Children in uniforms skipped past them, their laughter floating above the rhythm of traffic. Above it all, the sun poured down through a thin veil of clouds, soft and forgiving. From the training field near the edge of downtown, Ryan zipped his jacket, the faint breeze carrying the scent of asphalt and early coffee. Thor trotted beside him, tail high, posture alert, but relaxed. It was supposed to be a routine day, drills in the morning, patrol assignments by noon. "Let's make it quick today, partner," Ryan said, glancing at his watch. "I promised the captain I'd get those reports done before lunch." Thor huffed, tongue lolling, as if amused by the human obsession with schedules. They walked through the side gate, past a row of parked emergency vehicles gleaming under the light. Across the street, the city stretched, vibrant, restless, unknowing. Somewhere nearby, Lily and Maria were leaving their apartment. Maria carried a tote of groceries. Lily skipped beside her, the yellow balloon from her birthday bobbing behind her like a small sun. "Hold my hand when we cross, okay?" Maria said. "I am," Lily chirped. "Mommy, can we go by the park again later? Maybe Thor's training there." Maria smiled faintly, nodding. "If we finish shopping early." It was an ordinary sentence, ordinary footsteps, ordinary seconds, and then the earth shifted. At first it was subtle, like the ground exhaling. A low hum rose from beneath the pavement. Pigeons scattered in a flurry of wings. A fruit vendor's bottles rattled against each other, producing a ghostly chime. Ryan felt it before he heard it. A deep vibration under his boots. Unnatural. Alive. Thor stopped mid-step, ears pricked, head turning sharply toward the city center. His low growl vibrated through the air. "Hey," Ryan began, but the rest of his sentence was swallowed by the world coming apart. A roar erupted, not of sound, but of earth and metal tearing at once. The asphalt split open with a violent crack. The ground buckled, sending people staggering. Windows exploded outward. The sky filled with dust and screams. Maria grabbed Lily instinctively, pulling her under the awning of a small shop as debris rained down like hailstones. The balloon slipped from Lily's hand, rising slowly as the ground convulsed beneath them. Across the city, sirens wailed. Fire, police, ambulance, all at once, all overlapping. Ryan fell to one knee, clutching Thor's harness. The dog stayed still, eyes fixed on the horizon. No panic, no hesitation, just focus. "Stay with me!" Ryan shouted over the noise. They ran toward the chaos, weaving through falling power lines and shattered glass. A building ahead tilted, groaning like a wounded animal. A second later, it crumbled, the collapse echoing like thunder. Dust swallowed everything. People stumbled blindly, coughing, crying, searching for loved ones. Ryan's radio crackled with desperate voices, overlapping calls for rescue. "Downtown structure collapse. Multiple casualties. All units respond." Ryan pressed the transmitter. "Unit 4-5 responding. I have K9 Thor with me." Thor barked once, sharp and decisive, the sound of readiness. They moved as one. Ryan covered his mouth with a cloth, eyes scanning the debris. Thor's nose worked furiously, sifting through the scent of concrete, smoke, and fear. Every second mattered now. Meanwhile, in the chaos of the residential block, Maria shoved Lily under their kitchen table as another tremor hit. Dishes shattered. Plaster rained from the ceiling. Chimpstos 400 mumps. The floor rolled beneath them like waves. "It's okay, baby. Hold on to me," Maria cried, wrapping her arms around her daughter. The building screamed, metal twisting, bricks snapping. A chandelier crashed nearby, sparks bursting as wires tore free. The yellow balloon floated upward, bumping against the ceiling once, twice, and then slipped through a crack in the wall, drifting toward the light. Lily's eyes followed it, wide and tear-filled. "Mommy? My balloon? Don't look, sweetheart. Stay down." The ground jolted violently again. A sound like thunder cracked through the air. And then, silence. Half the apartment collapsed into itself. Back on the street, the tremors finally eased. The air was thick with dust and the metallic tang of fear. Ryan stood, wiping grime from his face. Around him, people screamed for help, names echoing in every direction. He took a deep breath. Thor, search! Thor darted forward instantly, weaving through twisted metal and concrete. His tail was low, his movements measured but quick. Ryan followed close behind, shouting to nearby officers. "We've got survivors here. We'll mark the path." The K9 unit became a beacon in the chaos. Thor's barks slicing through the noise, signaling life where machines couldn't. Every bark drew rescuers like moths to light. Ryan crouched beside him, hand gripping the harness. "Easy, boy. Focus. We'll get them out." Thor's ears flicked, muzzle coated in gray dust. His eyes, steel gray, unwavering, burned through the haze. Another aftershock rippled beneath them. A cracked sign crashed from above, narrowly missing Ryan. He ducked, adrenaline pounding, but Thor didn't flinch. "Still steady," Ryan muttered. "Still steady." They moved deeper into the rubble field, guided only by instinct. Human and canine fused by purpose. Around them, the city that had once been alive now groaned under its own weight. In the distance, smoke curled upward in black ribbons, and miles away, beneath what remained of an apartment building, Lily stirred in the dark, coughing weakly. Dust filled her lungs. Her small fingers clutched at nothing. Her balloon, that single flash of yellow, floated through the broken window, now rising into the dusty sunlight, twisting and gliding as if reluctant to leave. Hours later, emergency sirens blazed from every corner. The streets had become rivers of dust and debris. Ryan stood with the task force, issuing orders through cracked lips. "Thor's picking up something," one officer shouted. Ryan turned. The dog was pacing near a collapsed section of street, ears forward, nose twitching violently. He barked once, then twice. Short, urgent signals. Ryan knelt. "You've got something, don't you?" Thor barked again, pawing the ground. Ryan felt it then. The pull of trust, the same bond they had built over years. "Okay," he whispered, tightening his grip on the leash. "Show me where, partner." In that moment, a gust of wind swept through the ruins, carrying the faint, fluttering remnant of yellow plastic across the sky. It caught briefly on a beam of sunlight, before vanishing into the gray. The city was silent but for the distant cry of sirens. The day had roared, and when the noise finally died, the only sound left was the soft, steady pant of a dog ready to go where no human dared. Hours had passed since the quake. The roar had faded, leaving behind a city that no longer sounded human. No laughter, no traffic, no rhythm. Only the distant hum of generators and the hollow echo of boots over broken concrete. Dust hung in the air, like a ghost that refused to leave. The skyline was unrecognizable, jagged silhouettes against a bruised horizon. Smoke curled upward in slow spirals from collapsed buildings. Sirens wailed intermittently, sometimes near, sometimes faint, their cries echoing through canyons of ruin. Ryan stood amid it all, helmet crooked, face streaked with grime. His uniform was torn at the sleeve, his voice hoarse from shouting into radios that barely worked. But his eyes, though red from exhaustion, remained sharp. Beside him, Thor moved silently, nose to the ground, tail stiff, body tense and focused. The two had been searching for hours. The K9 task force had deployed across multiple zones, each pair responsible for a grid. The command tent buzzed with chaos, maps spread out, markers pressed into trembling hands, voices trembling between hope and despair. Ryan crouched beside Thor, giving him water from a dented canteen. "Take 5, buddy," he murmured. "You've been working non-stop." Thor lapped the water quickly, then looked up, ears twitching. His gaze swept across the debris as if he could see beyond it, through the layers of dust and concrete and heartbreak. "Anything?" one of the rescue supervisors called out, voice cracking. Ryan shook his head. "No hits. The scanners aren't picking up anything either." Nearby, a technician frowned at his monitor. "Thermal's clear. No heat signatures. If there were survivors here..." He trailed off. The rest, left unspoken. A heavy silence settled. Not the silence after the shaking stopped. This one was heavier. The silence of realization. The silence of fading hope. Ryan exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "We'll keep checking. The readings can be wrong. Dust could be interfering." The technician didn't answer. He didn't have to. Everyone knew that after 6 hours, the odds of finding anyone alive dropped sharply. Thor stood, paws crunching over glass and rubble, and began pacing. His nose twitched rapidly, breath quick and shallow. "Hey," Ryan said softly. "What is it?" Thor ignored the command, circling an area near what used to be an apartment building, now a jagged pile of rebar and crushed cement. He whined, low and restless. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "You're getting something?" Another rescuer, Captain Morris, approached, clipboard in hand. "That section's already cleared, Hale. Scans came back negative. We're moving the team east." Thor barked sharply, startling the nearby crew. Ryan turned. "Hold up. He's onto something." Morris frowned. "Or he's exhausted. These dogs have limits, Ryan. They've been running since dawn." "Yeah, but he doesn't false alert. Ever." Ryan's tone was steady but urgent. "If he's reacting, there's a reason." The captain sighed, glancing toward the ruined building. "That entire block's a death trap. It's unstable. We lose one more rescuer under there. I'll have to answer for it." Ryan clenched his jaw. The logical part of him knew Morris was right. Protocol existed for a reason. But another part, the part that had trusted Thor in fire, flood, and chaos, was screaming louder. Thor began digging at the rubble with frantic precision, barking once, then twice, the distinct tone of alert. Ryan's heart kicked. "He's marking!" Morris raised a hand. "There's nothing on the thermal. Look." But Ryan was already moving. Thermal can fail. Batteries die. Sensors glitch. He doesn't. The other rescuers exchanged uncertain glances, drawn by the urgency in Ryan's voice and the desperation in Thor's. Dust rose around them as the German shepherd clawed deeper, his paws cutting through soot and shards. Ryan dropped beside him, pulling away heavier chunks of concrete, his gloves tearing. "Easy, Thor. Easy, boy. What are you getting?" The dog's breathing quickened. He pawed harder, then pressed his muzzle against a narrow gap in the debris. A soft whine escaped him, a sound Ryan hadn't heard all day. It wasn't a signal bark. It was sorrow. Ryan froze. "You smell something. Someone." Thor looked up, eyes wide and burning, those steel eyes that never lied. He barked once, loud and sharp, the sound cutting through the suffocating quiet. Every rescuer turned. Morris hesitated, then exhaled heavily. "All right, you've got 5 minutes. But if it shifts..." "I know," Ryan cut in. "Well, we're careful." The team gathered, tools clanking, voices low. Shovels hit debris. The rhythmic scrape of metal against stone filled the air. Thor stayed close, nose pressed to the same crack. His tail trembled slightly, body coiled tight like a spring. He knew something. Something alive. Ryan worked beside him, sweat mixing with the dust streaking his face. His heart thudded in his ears, each beat syncing with Thor's panting. 5 minutes passed. Nothing. Then 10. The rescuers slowed, fatigue creeping in. Ryan, one of them said quietly. Maybe he's picking up a residual scent. There's no movement, no sound. Ryan dropped his shovel, breathing hard. No, look at him. Thor wasn't giving up. He paced in tight circles, then pressed his head against the ground again, whining louder this time. His paw scraped the same spot over and over, as if insisting, here, right here. The captain sighed, rubbing his forehead. You really think? I don't think, Ryan interrupted, his voice breaking slightly. I trust him. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the wind whispered through the wreckage. Finally, Morris gave a single nod. All right. Your call, Hale. Ryan swallowed hard, throat dry. He crouched beside Thor, brushing the dust from the dog's fur. You sure, buddy? You sure you want to go in there? Thor met his eyes. That same unflinching steel. Ryan exhaled, voice barely a whisper. Okay, buddy. Show me where. The moment hung suspended, quiet, charged. Around them, the ruined city seemed to hold its breath. Thor lowered his head, gave one final bark, and began squeezing through the narrow gap he'd uncovered. Ryan's pulse hammered in his ears as the dog's body disappeared into the darkness. Behind him, the team waited in uneasy silence, the dust settling over their helmets like snow. The earth was still now, too still, and somewhere deep beneath the wreckage, a heartbeat, faint, fragile, almost drowned by the weight above, waited to be found. The wind had died completely. What remained was a soundless weight pressing down on the ruins, the kind of silence that follows tragedy, thick and suffocating. Dust hung in the air like an eternal twilight. Rescue lights flickered through the haze, beams cutting across twisted metal and slabs of broken concrete. Ryan crouched beside the wreckage, breath ragged, one hand gripping his radio, the other clutching Thor's leash. The canine's body was tense, every muscle alive with purpose. They had been searching this block for hours, the same hollowed-out stretch of what used to be an apartment complex. The machines still read nothing. No heat, no sound, no motion. But Thor didn't believe that. Thor, Ryan said softly, glancing at the crew behind him. We've cleared this section twice. The German shepherd's ears twitched, his nose pressed against the ground, snuffling sharply, inhaling through layers of dust and debris. Then, without warning, he jerked his head toward the far corner of the collapsed structure. It was a section the scanners had dismissed completely. A tangle of concrete, rebar, and splintered beams so dense the rescue chief had marked it dead zone. Not there, one of the rescuers muttered. That part's gone. It's all voided. Thor barked once, deep, cutting through the heavy air like a gunshot. Ryan's gut twisted. He knew that bark. It wasn't frustration. It was certainty. Easy, boy, he warned. You'll hurt yourself. But Thor was already moving. He lunged toward the heap, claws scraping rock, tail rigid with concentration. His paws dug with wild determination, sending up clouds of gray dust. Every motion was primal, unstoppable, as if something in the ground was calling to him. Ryan rushed forward. Thor, stop! You'll bring it down! The rest of the crew stepped back, shouting warnings. A loose beam creaked overhead, groaning under invisible strain. Ryan's heart hammered as he grabbed the leash, trying to pull the dog back. But Thor dug harder, his body shaking with effort. Damn it, Thor, stop! Ryan shouted again. But even as he yelled, he couldn't bring himself to pull harder. He'd seen that look before, that unshakable focus, the instinct that had saved lives long before technology even caught a hint. Sir, one of the engineers called. Our readings show no air pockets there. If you let him dig, it could destabilize the entire section. Ryan's eyes didn't leave his partner. If he's digging, it's for a reason. Or he's losing it, the man shot back. He's exhausted. You both are. Ryan didn't answer. His throat felt dry, the world shrinking down to the sound of paws against rock. Thor's barks came faster now, short and fierce, each one reverberating in Ryan's chest. Then, suddenly, Thor stopped. He stood still for half a heartbeat, ears straight, eyes locked on the rubble. And before Ryan could react, the dog slipped into a narrow crevice between two fallen slabs. Thor! The leash jerked out of Ryan's hands. He lunged forward, scraping his palms on jagged concrete. Thor, come back! The gap was barely wide enough for a man's arm, but Thor's body vanished into it like smoke. His harness light flickered once, then disappeared. Jesus, one of the crew muttered. He's under the collapse. Ryan dropped to his knees, pressing his face close to the opening. All he could hear was his own breathing, harsh, frantic. The rubble trembled faintly, and a plume of dust spilled out, stinging his eyes. Thor! His voice cracked. Buddy, answer me! No reply. The silence that followed was unbearable, seconds stretching like hours. Every rescuer stood frozen, watching Ryan kneel in the dirt, whispering his partner's name. Somewhere behind him, someone muttered, He's gone too deep. Ryan's chest constricted. He pressed his hand against the cold concrete. Please, God, he whispered, not like this. Then, faintly, a sound. At first it was so soft he thought he imagined it. A muffled thump, then another, then the unmistakable echo of a bark. Distant, strained, but alive. Wait, wait! He's signaling! Ryan shouted. The crew scrambled closer. Ryan pressed his ear against the gap. Thor was barking again, not randomly, but in a deliberate rhythm. The rescue code for alive detected. Ryan's voice broke. You found someone, didn't you? You damn hero! The chief called over the radio. Confirm, Unit 4-5, did you say a live signal? Ryan's voice shook. Negative on sensors, but K9 Thor's indicating positive. Repeat. Positive live detection. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the silence shattered. Get the extraction tools. Bring the air sensors. Move those lights. The site exploded into motion. Rescuers surged toward the marked area, shouting coordinates and orders. The metallic clang of shovels filled the air, followed by the grinding roar of a concrete cutter. Ryan knelt beside the crevice, calling out between breaths. Keep barking, Thor. Let me hear you, boy. Thor answered, a sharp bark from deep below. Then, another sound, faint and trembling. Something not canine. A small, muffled cry. Ryan froze. Every head turned. Did you hear that? Someone whispered. The cry came again, high, weak, human, a child's voice. Oh my God, the medic said softly. There's someone down there. Ryan's knees went weak. He found her. He actually found someone. He pressed his face to the opening again. Hold on, sweetheart. We're coming. Thor's with you. Con, you're not alone. The digging intensified. Sparks flew as metal cut through debris. Rescuers shouted measurements, hands trembling as they cleared one layer after another. Ryan kept talking to Thor, his voice steady, but breaking between words. Good boy. Keep her safe, you hear me? Keep her safe. The ground vibrated from the machinery. Dust burned their lungs. Every second felt eternal. Signal's stronger, someone yelled. I can hear movement under there. Ryan's pulse pounded. Thor, buddy, hang in there. Another bark echoed, closer now, louder. and beneath it, the faint, choked sob of a little girl. Ryan looked up, eyes wet and shining through the grime. "We've got a live one," he shouted, voice raw. The team cheered, a chorus of disbelief and relief merging into one sound that rose above the ruin. The impossible had become real, and as the rescuers tore through the last layer of rubble, Ryan pressed a trembling hand over his heart. Somewhere deep beneath that broken world, Thor was alive, and he had found a child who still had a heartbeat. For the first time since the ground had roared, the city breathed again. The rescue site was chaos, a blur of lights, voices, and pounding tools. Dust swirled like storm clouds under the harsh glow of flood lamps, the sound of grinding metal mixed with shouted commands. But beneath it all, one sound cut through, the muffled barking from deep within the rubble. "Thor's still in there!" Ryan yelled, crouched beside the opening. His hands were raw, his face streaked with sweat and grime. "He's with her! Keep digging!" Every rescuer moved with frantic precision, fueled by adrenaline and disbelief. They had heard it, the soft, weak sob of a child, and the dog's answering bark. Hope, once buried, had found its voice again. "Careful with that beam," the captain barked. "One wrong move and it all comes down." A heavy slab was lifted, revealing a gap just wide enough for a flashlight beam to pierce through. Dust shimmered like ash in the light. Ryan leaned in, calling out, "Thor, you hear me, buddy?" No bark answered this time, only silence, then the faintest rustle. "Movement!" a rescuer shouted. "There's movement below!" Heartbeats quickened. They tore away the last layers of debris by hand, ignoring splinters and cuts. Each breath came shallow, strained with fear, and then, through the jagged remains of concrete, they saw it. Thor's body. He was wedged in a hollow pocket between slabs, his fur gray with dust, his flank rising in slow, trembling breaths. Beneath him, wrapped in the remnants of a pink blanket, lay a little girl. "Dear God," one of the medics whispered. It took everyone a moment to understand what they were seeing. Thor wasn't just next to her. He was covering her. His massive frame curved protectively around the child like armor. Ryan's voice broke. He shielded her. He took it all. The rescuers froze, overcome by the sight. The dog's back was cut and bloodied, his sides caked in rubble dust. One paw still rested lightly across the girl's small chest, as if he'd been guarding her to his last breath. "She's breathing," someone called. "She's alive." The world erupted into motion again. Tools clattered. Stretchers appeared. Medics crawled forward, carefully prying away the last stones. "Get the harness," Ryan shouted, already reaching into the gap. He brushed dust from Thor's muzzle, whispering, "I've got you, buddy. Hold on. Don't you dare let go now." Thor's eyes fluttered open, dull, unfocused, but still alive. His gaze met Ryan's for a brief, trembling second. Then, weakly, he nudged the girl with his nose, as if reminding them why he was there. Ryan's throat tightened. "Yeah," he said softly, choking on the words. "I see her. You did it." With painstaking care, they lifted the slabs enough to pull both bodies free. The medics took the girl first, wrapping her in a thermal blanket. She whimpered softly, eyelids fluttering. Her voice was faint, almost dreamlike. "Thor," Ryan froze. "She said his name." Someone whispered, "How the hell could she know?" But Ryan already knew. That moment at the fence, the yellow balloon, the way Thor had stared at her like he already recognized her soul. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known. They laid Thor beside her on the ground. His chest rose shallowly, unevenly. The girl's small hand reached out, brushing his fur, leaving a streak of white dust on his dark coat. "Stay with me," Ryan murmured, kneeling beside him. "You're all right, partner. You did good." The medics moved fast, one checking Thor's vitals, another tending to the girl. The child's pulse was faint but steady, the dog's barely there. "He's going into shock," one medic said grimly. "We're losing him." "No," Ryan said, shaking his head. "Not like this. Not after this." He pressed his forehead to Thor's, whispering, "Stay with me, boy. Please." Thor's tail twitched once, then again, a small, stubborn spark of life refusing to go out. Nearby, rescuers pulled another survivor from the rubble, Maria. She was covered in dust and blood, barely conscious. Her eyes darted wildly, searching. "Lily! She's here!" a medic shouted. "Your daughter's alive!" Maria stumbled forward, supported by two rescuers, and when she saw her child, her little girl lying next to the dog, her legs gave out. She fell to her knees, sobbing without sound. For a long moment, she couldn't move, couldn't speak. She just stared, trembling, hand over her mouth, tears cutting paths through the dust on her cheeks. Then Lily's eyes flickered open. "Mommy!" Maria crawled the last few feet, clutching her daughter in shaking arms. The blanket slipped away as she pressed her forehead against Lily's. Both of them shaking, from cold, from relief. No words. Only the broken sound of breath returning to life. Behind them, Ryan kept his hand on Thor's side, counting the slow rhythm of his breathing, each one weaker than the last. The medics attached a portable IV. "Heart rate's dropping," one shouted. "Come on, Thor," Ryan whispered, voice cracking. "You're stronger than this. You've always been stronger." Thor's eyes blinked open again, glassy, distant. He looked toward the little girl one last time. His paw twitched slightly, as if reaching out. Then his head sank against the dirt. "Heart rate's unstable." The machine beside him beeped erratically, wild, uneven, desperate. Ryan's hands trembled. "Don't you do this, buddy. You hear me? You don't leave me now." The medics worked frantically. Compressions, oxygen, injections. The rescuers, hardened men who'd seen death too many times, stood silent, faces streaked with tears they didn't bother to hide. And then, well, for a moment, the noise of the world faded again. Only the beeping monitor remained, a weak, slow, fading rhythm. Ryan pressed his hand to Thor's chest, whispering through clenched teeth, "Stay with me, partner." The beeping stuttered, then steadied, barely. A collective exhale broke through the night. The medics looked at each other, disbelief washing over exhaustion. "He's still with us," one said quietly. Ryan Haas closed his eyes, relief and sorrow colliding in one breath. "That's it," he whispered. "That's my boy." The floodlights flickered as a breeze swept through the ruins, carrying with it the faint cry of sirens and the heartbeat of a city beginning to heal. And as the rescuers lifted Thor and Lily onto stretchers, the scene blurred into the dim glow of an ambulance cabin, monitors flickering, oxygen masks humming. Ryan sat between them, one hand on the stretcher beside him, the other resting over Thor's paw. The rhythm of the heart monitor echoed in his ears, faint, fragile, but still alive. Rain tapped softly against the hospital windows that night, a steady, rhythmic sound that filled the spaces between beeping monitors and hushed voices. Outside, the city still trembled from aftershocks and grief. But inside, In a quiet corner of the emergency wing, there were two survivors clinging to life, a little girl and a German shepherd who refused to die. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and dust, the scent of both healing and loss. Reporters had already gathered by the entrance earlier that morning, their microphones and cameras crowding the steps. The headlines rolled across every screen in the country. Hero dog saves child from rubble. K9 Thor, the guardian angel beneath the earth. But inside the ICU, the world felt small, fragile, intimate. Ryan sat in a hard plastic chair beside Thor's bed, his uniform still streaked with grime despite the nurse's attempts to clean him up. His eyes were red, not from exhaustion, but from the kind of helplessness that turns even seasoned men quiet. He hadn't left the room once, not for food, not for rest. Thor lay on the table, covered in bandages and IV lines. His fur had been shaved in patches for surgery. A soft oxygen mask covered his muzzle, fogging slightly with each faint breath. The heart monitor at his side beeped slowly, irregular, stubborn. Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice a whisper. "You've got the whole damn country talking about you. You know that?" He gave a weak smile. "They're calling you a hero. Not bad for a mutt from the shelter, huh?" He reached out and touched Thor's paw. Warm, but barely. "They said you weren't strong enough for rescue work," Ryan continued softly, his voice cracking. "But you proved them wrong, like always." He let out a breath, running a hand over his face. "Do you remember our first mission? The warehouse fire on 8th Street? You were still a rookie then, almost bolted when the floor gave out." A faint laugh escaped him, small and broken. "But you came back for that kid. You never hesitated again after that." The monitor beeped on, a slow and fragile rhythm. Across the hallway, in another room, Lily lay in a smaller bed, her left arm in a cast, tiny bruises scattered across her cheeks. A nurse had pinned the pink blanket she'd been found with to the side of her bed, cleaned and folded neatly. It was the same blanket Thor had dragged her out with. Maria sat nearby, holding her daughter's hand, tears still finding their way down her cheeks days after the rescue. Lily was awake now, her voice still hoarse. "Mommy, is Thor okay?" Maria swallowed hard, forcing a smile. He's fighting, sweetheart. He's very brave." Lily nodded, picking up a crayon from her bedside tray. She began to draw, slowly, carefully. The image formed in crooked, childlike lines. A dog with big eyes and a wagging tail standing under a bright sun. Next to him, a small girl holding a balloon. Above them, she wrote in shaky letters, "My guardian angel, Thor." When she finished, she clutched the drawing to her chest. "Can I give it to him?" Maria hesitated, then nodded. "Tomorrow, when you're stronger." But that night, Ryan found the drawing waiting at Thor's door, folded, taped to the wall beside the bed. He stared at it for a long time, his vision blurring. Then he smiled, a small, tired curve of hope. He reached for Thor's paw again. "She's okay, buddy. You did it. She's alive because of you." The monitor kept its slow, fragile rhythm. Hours passed. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, whispering updates. Ryan barely noticed. Time had stopped meaning anything. By midnight, the rain had stopped, replaced by the steady hum of fluorescent lights. The hospital was quiet. Too quiet. Ryan's head hung low, his eyes heavy but refusing to close. A soft alarm chirped from one of the machines. A nurse stepped in, adjusted the IV, and gave him a sympathetic look. "You should get some rest, Officer Hale. He's stable for now. Ryan nodded but didn't move. If I leave, he'll know. She smiled faintly. You really believe that? I don't just believe it, he said quietly. I've seen it. The nurse hesitated, then left, closing the door gently behind her. For a while there was only the sound of the heart monitor and the faint hum of oxygen. Ryan sat motionless, staring at Thor. The dog's chest barely rose. His fur, once golden and strong, now looked dull under the sterile light. Hey, Ryan whispered. If you can hear me, I need you to fight. Just one more time. He leaned closer, pressing his forehead against Thor's. You're not done yet. You still have to chase your ball, remember? And Lily, she's waiting for you. She drew you with wings. The beeping grew softer. Ryan froze. No. No, no, no. The monitor flickered. The line on the screen stuttering. The rhythm became erratic. Then, flat. A long, unbroken tone filled the room. Ryan's breath caught. No! He shot to his feet, slamming the call button. Get in here! He's crashing! Doctors rushed in, pushing him aside. Hands moved quickly. Compressions, injections, the rush of air through tubes. The sound of commands filled the air. Come on, Ryan whispered from the corner, fists clenched. He couldn't breathe. Every muscle in his body screamed to help, but he could only watch. Still no pulse. His knees gave out. He dropped to the floor, his vision blurring. The memory of Thor's eyes, those gray, steady eyes, burned behind his lids. He whispered through tears, Please don't go, partner. Not like this. Not after everything. A minute passed. 2. Then, a sound. Faint. Irregular. But real. Beep. The room froze. Beep. Beep. Pulse returning, a nurse shouted. Ryan's eyes snapped open. He's back? Heart rate climbing. Weak but present. Ryan let out a shuddering laugh. Half sob, half disbelief. He pressed his hands to his face, tears streaking the grime. You stubborn dog, he whispered. You just don't quit, do you? The monitor steadied again. Weak, fragile, but steady. The doctors stepped back, exchanging relieved looks. He's a fighter, one said softly. Ryan nodded, still crying. Always has been. Outside, dawn was breaking, the first pale light creeping through the rain-streaked windows. In the next room, Lily stirred in her sleep, clutching her drawing close. The crayon sun shone brightly over a smiling dog, with wings. And in the ICU, the faint rhythm of life continued, the sound of a heartbeat refusing to fade. Beep, beep, beep. The city had begun to heal, but its skyline still carried scars. Cranes dotted the horizon like sentinels. Streets once filled with noise now moved in cautious rhythm. Amid the reconstruction and grief, one story had risen above the rubble. A story of courage that refused to fade. It had been 3 weeks since the earthquake, and the mayor had called for a public ceremony to honor the rescue teams who had risked everything. The stage was set in the city plaza, surrounded by rows of folding chairs and white banners fluttering against the crisp morning breeze. Cameras lined the perimeters, and hundreds gathered, not to celebrate victory, but to pay tribute to resilience, to humanity at its best. On the screen above the stage, a picture of Thor filled the display. The German shepherd whose eyes had become a symbol of hope. The caption beneath read, Thor, the dog who listened to the heartbeat of hope. Ryan stood behind the stage, hands in his pockets, dressed in a pressed uniform that didn't quite feel right without his partner beside him. The weight of the medal in his palm felt heavier than any he had ever received. He turned it over, staring at the engraved words, "For bravery beyond duty." "He would have loved this," said Captain Morris quietly, stepping beside him. Ryan smiled faintly. "He'd probably just fall asleep halfway through." Morris nodded, his expression somber. "You sure you want to speak? You don't have to." Ryan looked toward the big screen where Thor's image glowed above the crowd. "Yeah," he murmured. "I do." Across the city, in a quiet hospital room, sunlight filtered through thin curtains, bathing everything in soft gold. Thor lay on a padded bed, his front leg wrapped in bandages, a small oxygen tube resting near his nose. The steady beep of the monitor kept time with his breathing, slower now, but steady. A nurse adjusted the IV line and smiled. "Big day for you, hero," she said gently. "They're giving you an award." Thor blinked slowly, lifting his head just enough to see the television across the room. The ceremony was live. On the screen, the mayor stepped up to the microphone, his voice booming across the plaza. "We gather here today to honor those who brought light to our darkest hour," he began. "Among them, one name has touched every heart. Not a man, but a friend, a partner, a hero." Thor's ears twitched at the sound of his name. The nurse turned up the volume. Beside him sat Lily, bundled in a small wheelchair, her hair braided neatly, the same pink blanket draped across her lap. She'd begged her mother to let her watch in Thor's room instead of at home. "See, Mommy?" she whispered. "He's famous now." Maria smiled faintly, squeezing her daughter's hand. "He's always been famous to you." "He's my best friend," Lily grinned. Back at the plaza, Ryan approached the podium. The applause faded into a respectful silence as he adjusted the microphone. His voice, when it came, was steady, but soft, like a man balancing pride and pain in the same breath. "Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm supposed to accept this award on behalf of my partner, Thor. But the truth is, I don't think he'd understand what a medal means. He never did any of this for recognition." He paused, glancing toward the crowd. In the front row sat dozens of first responders, firefighters, paramedics, K9 handlers. Many had tears in their eyes. "When we train these dogs," Ryan continued, "we teach them commands, routines, obedience. But there's one thing you can't teach: heart. Thor has that in ways I can't explain. He's brave, yes, but more than that, he's pure. When the rest of us hesitated, he went in. When logic said it was hopeless, he trusted something deeper." He stopped, his throat tightening. The paper in his hand trembled. I watched him crawl into Swapon, that hole, knowing it might be the last thing he ever did. And he didn't do it for applause. He didn't do it for medals. Ryan's voice cracked, just slightly. He did it because love doesn't ask why. The words hung in the air like a prayer. The crowd was silent, hundreds standing, heads bowed, some wiping tears from their cheeks. On the big screen, the camera zoomed in on Ryan's face, raw, unguarded, human. "Thor reminded me that courage isn't loud," he said softly. "Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like a dog lying across a child's body to keep her safe." He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "So this medal, it's not for him. It's for what he taught us. That even in the darkest places, love can still find a way." Applause erupted. Not thunderous, but heartfelt, rising in waves. The mayor stepped forward, pinning the medal to Ryan's uniform. Ryan nodded, blinking back tears. At the hospital, Lily clapped along with the television, her small hands making soft, uneven sounds. "He did it, Mommy! He won!" Thor stirred, his head lifting weakly. On the screen, Ryan held up the medal to the crowd. "See?" Lily whispered, leaning closer. "That's for you." Thor's gaze lingered on the screen. His tail gave a faint, tired wag. Barely emotion, but enough to make Maria cover her mouth with a trembling hand. Lily reached out, resting her fingers on his paw. "You're my hero," she said softly. Thor blinked, slow and heavy, as if answering. The nurse wiped at her eyes discreetly. "He's listening," she whispered. On the TV, Ryan stepped back from the podium as the ceremony concluded. Behind him, the crowd rose for a standing ovation. Flags waved in the wind. For a moment, all the pain and ruin of the past weeks seemed to dissolve, replaced by something simple and powerful. Unity, gratitude, love. Back in the hospital, Thor lowered his head onto the blanket beside Lily's chair. The heart monitor continued its slow, steady rhythm. Ryan's voice echoed faintly from the television. "He taught me that real strength doesn't bark or roar. It simply stands guard, even when no one is watching." Tears spilled freely down Maria's face. Lily smiled through hers. "He's not alone anymore, Mommy," she whispered. "We're all with him." Thor's eyes drifted closed, his breathing calm, peaceful. The medal glinted on the screen. The applause faded into soft music as the camera panned upward, catching the flutter of white banners against the sky, banners printed with his name. For one shining moment, the entire city, broken, rebuilt, reborn, seemed to breathe as one. The hero wasn't there to receive his medal, but his courage had already given the city something far greater: hope. The morning air was crisp when the hospital doors slid open, and sunlight spilled across the tiled floor. Nurses, doctors, and paramedics lined the hallway quietly. No fanfare, no cameras, just hearts full of gratitude. And there, walking slowly but steadily between them, was Thor. His gait was uneven, one hind leg still stiff from injury, but his head was high, tail swaying with quiet dignity. The white bandages had been replaced with smaller ones, barely visible beneath his golden fur. Around his neck hung a red collar with a small silver tag. Thor, K9 Rescue Unit. Beside him, Ryan walked in silence, his hand resting gently on the dog's shoulder. Every step seemed to echo through the corridor, each one heavier with meaning than the last. The world outside felt impossibly bright after weeks of fluorescent lights and antiseptic air. When they reached the exit, the glass doors opened with a sigh, and the sound of applause drifted from the courtyard. The rescue team stood waiting, men and women still in dusty uniforms, helmets tucked under their arms, eyes glistening in the morning sun. "Welcome home, hero," one of them said softly. Thor paused, ears twitching, eyes sweeping over the familiar faces. His tail wagged once, slow, deliberate. Someone had set up a small table nearby with treats, water bowls, and a simple banner made from a torn bedsheet. "Thank you, Thor." It wasn't an official celebration. No speeches, no photographers. Just the people who had seen him crawl through hell and come back. Ryan knelt beside him, scratching under his chin. "You made it, buddy, against every odd." Thor leaned into the touch, closing his eyes for a moment, as if savoring the warmth of the sun on his fur. Across the courtyard, Lily came running, her cast gone, her small legs pumping with determination. She wore a bright yellow dress and held something in her hand. a drawing of Thor with wings and a big smile. "Thor!" she shouted, her voice ringing like a bell. The dog's ears perked. The moment he saw her, his tail began to wag harder. Despite the limp, he started toward her, slow at first, then faster, his body remembering joy. Lily threw her arms around his neck as soon as he reached her, burying her face in his fur. "I missed you so much." Ryan watched, his throat tightening. For all the medals and headlines, this simple reunion was what it had all been for. Maria followed a few steps behind, smiling through tears. She bent down to pet Thor's head. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving her back to me." Thor's only response was a soft sigh, the kind dogs make when they finally understand their home. That afternoon, the rescue team gathered around a picnic table in the training yard. It was quiet, the kind of silence that comes after too much noise, peaceful, heavy with reflection. Paper cups clinked. Someone brought a cake shaped like a paw print. Thor lay on a blanket nearby, his head resting on Lily's lap. She traced lazy circles on his fur, humming softly. Ryan sat across from them, sipping coffee gone cold. Morris leaned back in his chair. "The department's made a decision," he said. "Thor's officially being retired from active duty." Ryan nodded slowly. He'd known it was coming. The injuries, the recovery. Even if Thor healed, he'd never move quite the same again. But hearing it still hit hard. "He's earned it," Morris continued gently. "He's done more than most of us ever will." Ryan glanced down at the dog, now sleeping peacefully under the afternoon sun. "Yeah," he said quietly, "he has." There was a pause. Then Morris added, "They want to know if you'll keep him." Ryan exhaled, his eyes lingering on Lily. The way she smiled in her sleep, her hand still resting on Thor's paw. "He already picked his home," Ryan said finally. "He knew it before any of us did." Morris tilted his head. "You're sure?" Ryan nodded. "He belongs with her. She's the reason he fought through all that pain. The reason he didn't stop digging that day. Maybe he knew she'd need him long after we didn't." The captain said nothing more, just placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "You're a good man." Ryan smiled faintly. "Nah, I just had a good teacher." He looked back at Thor, at the slow rise and fall of his chest, the gray beginning to creep into his muzzle. He felt pride, but also a quiet ache that words couldn't touch. That evening, Ryan helped Lily's family load Thor into their car. The dog hesitated at first, old habits dying hard, then turned back to look at Ryan. For a moment, it was as if they were back on the training field again. Two partners waiting for a command, reading each other's silence. Ryan knelt one last time, pressing his forehead to Thor's. "You did your job, partner. Better than anyone could have asked. Now it's time to rest." Thor licked his cheek softly, a gesture of understanding that made Ryan's vision blur. "Take care of her," Ryan whispered. "That's your new mission." Maria and Lily stood nearby, watching the quiet exchange. Ryan handed Maria a small envelope, Thor's service certificate and tag. "He's officially retired," he said. "But if you ever need anything at all, call me." Maria nodded, her voice thick. "Thank you, Officer Hale, for trusting us." Lily hugged Ryan tightly. "Don't worry," she said earnestly. "I'll take good care of him." Ryan smiled through the sting in his chest. "I know you will." As they drove away, Thor's head rested on the open window, the wind tugging at his fur. His reflection flickered in the glass. the hero no longer chasing danger, but peace. Ryan stood in the fading light, hands in his pockets, watching until the car turned the corner and disappeared. The training yard behind him was empty now. The evening breeze carried faint echoes of barking, the sounds of drills long past. He looked at the worn leash in his hand, the same one that had pulled him through countless rescues, and smiled sadly. "Goodbye, partner," he murmured. "You did your duty. Now go be free." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of amber and gold. For the first time in weeks, Ryan felt stillness. Not the stillness of grief, but the kind that follows when a promise has been kept. And somewhere down that quiet road, in a small home filled with laughter and light, a dog closed his eyes beside the girl he'd saved, finally at peace with the world he'd once fought to protect. The morning sun rose soft and golden over the rebuilt city. The air carried the scent of fresh earth and blooming magnolias, a smell of renewal, of life finding its rhythm again after a year of silence and dust. Where Rubble once lay, there now stood a small memorial garden, quiet, green, and peaceful. And there, in the heart of it, a bronze plaque gleamed under the sunlight. For Thor, who listened to the heartbeat of hope. People passed by every morning, some pausing to read, some bowing their heads, some leaving a flower or a small dog tag at the base. It had become more than a memorial. It was a reminder of courage, and of a bond between man and animal that had changed an entire city's heart. A few blocks away, the familiar sound of laughter broke the morning calm. Lily, now 7, walked down the sidewalk with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Her small hand held a leash, and at the other end, moving with careful, measured steps, was Thor. He was slower now. The limp never fully went away, but his eyes were bright, full of that same steady light. His fur had grown thicker again, streaked with silver around the muzzle, a mark of honor rather than age. Every few steps, Lily stopped to wait for him, looking up with that gentle patience only children have. "Come on, Thor," she said with a grin. "You're gonna make me late for class again." Thor gave a soft huff, tail wagging once before he started forward again. Maria watched from the porch, her heart full. She still woke some nights remembering the earthquake, the sound, the chaos, the fear, but mornings like this made it feel like another lifetime. She waved as they turned the corner. "Be good, you two!" Lily looked back and shouted, "We always are!" The route to school passed through the memorial park. Each morning, Lily stopped beneath the wide oak where the plaque stood. Thor would sit beside her, panting softly as she brushed away the leaves. "Hi, Thor statue," she giggled. "Real Thor's here again." From her bag, she pulled a paper heart she'd cut herself. In crayon it read, "Thank you for saving me." She placed it by the plaque, beside wilted flowers. Thor sniffed it, then rested his chin near the stone. "He likes it here," Lily whispered. "It's quiet." Nearby, Ryan stood watching. A year had changed him. Shorter hair, deeper lines, no uniform. His badge hung loosely from a chain in his hand. When Lily spotted him, her face lit up. "Officer Ryan!" He smiled. "Hey, kiddo. You look taller." "Mom says 2 inches," she grinned. "And Thor still eats like a horse." Ryan knelt, running his hand through the dog's fur. "He looks good. Better than I expected." "He gets tired sometimes," Lily said, "but he likes sleeping under trees now." "Yeah," Ryan nodded. "He's earned that." He held up the badge. "This was mine, the one I wore when he found you. It belongs here now." He placed it beneath the plaque, beside Lily's paper heart. For a moment they stood in silence. The man, the girl, and the dog who had changed everything. Ryan looked down. You remember this place, don't you, partner? You always knew the way out. Thor's tail thumped once. Ryan smiled faintly. Still do. That afternoon, the park glowed gold in the setting sun. Lily sat beneath the oak again, Thor's head on her lap. She hummed softly, her mother's tune, and traced gentle patterns in his fur. Mom says you're getting old, she whispered. But I think you're just peaceful. She opened her sketchbook. On the page was Thor beneath a tree, sunlight above him. See? That's you right now. I'll draw you every year so no one forgets. Thor blinked slowly, eyes soft with trust. Lily pressed her cheek to his head. The breeze stirred the branches. Thor's breathing slowed, calm, steady, peaceful. Ryan arrived in time to see them. The girl, the dog, the golden light. He didn't move closer. He only watched, the ache in his chest giving way to gratitude. Under the oak, Thor's tail twitched once, then stilled. His eyes closed, not in pain, but in peace. Lily's whisper carried on the wind. It's okay. I'll take it from here. She held his worn leather leash close to her chest as the sun sank behind the trees. Ryan removed his hat, bowing his head. A single leaf drifted down, settling beside Thor's paw. Lily looked up, smiling through her tears. The camera would linger, on the girl, the leash, the quiet hero sleeping beneath the oak. Then a voice would rise, warm and steady. Sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms. They wag their tails and teach us what love truly means. And as the world turned golden, it felt whole again. You know, stories like Thor's remind us why dogs touch something deep inside the human heart. They don't judge. They don't ask for anything in return. They simply love, fiercely, faithfully, and without condition. A German Shepherd's loyalty isn't just instinct. It's a kind of grace that pulls us closer to what's good in the world. If you've ever looked into your own dog's eyes and felt that wordless connection, that quiet understanding, you already know what I mean. They remind us to be gentler, to listen more, and to love harder. If this story stirred something in you, maybe take a moment to explore a little more about how you can deepen that bond with your own dog. There's a wonderful resource I like to share, one that helps people connect, train, and truly understand their dogs on a heart level. You can find it right here if you'd like. No pressure, just something beautiful that might make those quiet moments with your best friend mean even more. Because in the end, love like that, it's what keeps the world steady.